Hi everyone, I'm Glenda with SureFit Designs, and lots of you know me as Glenda the Good Stitch. Today I want to focus on your back and the back bodice of our pattern. You know, when you get SureFit Designs, you draw off your pattern, we always recommend that you do a test garment. And when you do, sometimes it fits you straight out of the box, and that's great, and other times you might have some body issues that are happening. You might have a sewing issue or maybe a cutting out issue, but we're going to take a look at a fit issue that can be resolved very, very easily. And what that is how to recognize the diagonal fold line, the drag line, what it means, and how to fix it. And it's on the back of your bodice. I did this presentation actually in our live video, one of our live videos, and I had a number of ladies ask me if I could make an independent video of this process and put it up in our SureFit Designs Learning Center. And I said, absolutely, I'd be happy to do that for you. So here we go. Let's take a look at what could be happening on your bodice. As we take a look at this top right here, you're going to see that there are some fold lines coming out from underneath the arm and going up in towards the center of the back. That is saying to me that it needs more length at the back of the bodice. Now, I can't tell because of the photograph is cut off and because her hair is hiding at the neckline here, but there's a really good chance she needs more length up at the top as well for her back neckline. So then we'll take a look at this white one, and it's very similar. The difference is that with this white bodice, the first test was done without sleeves. Now, when you don't have sleeves in your garment, you could have another situation happening, is that you can see the fold coming out from the underarm towards the middle of the upper back, but you also might ask yourself the question and say, is that armhole too tight? And it may well be, but keep in mind that once the sleeve is sewn in place, that 5/8 of an inch is going to be removed from the entire armhole so that that armhole is going to sit lower. And so it's not a true fair test to determine whether or not that wrinkle is coming from the armhole being too tight or the back bodice not being long enough. In this case, I guessed and I said, I just bet that she needs a back bodice that is longer. So as we go on to the solution, and again, I'll be showing you this in a moment, I then asked this customer to take another photograph, and what I told her to do was simply split her back bodice across from armhole to armhole, leaving like a hinge at the 5/8 inch seam allowance on the stitching line of the armhole, cut the back open, and then insert a piece of fabric. So you go to nothing at the side seams or at the arm size seams and open it up in the center. And look at the remarkable difference it made to the back of her bodice. Now that diagonal fold is completely gone. Let's take a look at another example here. Unfortunately, I didn't get the before photograph, but I did get the after photograph. This was a lady who came to one of my private workshops, and I could see that in her test garment she needed more length at the back, and also that she did need a little bit more height at the center back, at the nape of her neck, and so this was a perfect solution. So we cut the fabric, leaving hinges at the armhole, and inserted anywhere from 5/8 to 3/4 of an inch, and you can see in the white stitching how it goes to nothing at the side seams, and again it provided a perfect solution for the back of her bodice. So now let's take a look at how you actually are going to make that change on your pattern. So here's the bodice back, and what we're going to do now is say, okay, where do we want that opening in the back to be? Well, part of it depends on where the most dominant rounding is in your back. And so you might have a cut line higher up or lower down. And in this circumstance, I'll just do one just a little bit above the double notches on the back of the pattern. Now, in order to do this, I'm drawing a perpendicular line. And when I say perpendicular, it's perpendicular to the center back. So I've just taken my line drafter and I'm keeping one of the dominant lines exactly on the center back of the pattern. And I drew my line coming across. Now, I'm going to be cutting from the center back over to the armhole, and that big red dot right there is going to become my pivot point. So I'll just take a piece of my tape and lay that over top to help give that area a little bit of stability. Then I am simply going to cut open up to that pivot point and then pick it up on the other side of the pivot point and cut across the entire pattern. And if I didn't get quite close enough to the pivot point, I can always do that with tiny little nippers. And I might need to get in with my scissors just to make sure I get a little, whoops, there, and I went ahead and cut it too much. So, you know, that's not the first time that's happened to me. Let's just go ahead and retape, and that same thing could happen to you as well. So we'll try again here. We are going to cut up to the pivot point, but not quite all the way through. And I'm not left-handed, so I've got to turn the vellum to cut this direction. There we go. All right, now I'll turn this back to the camera. So now what I'm going to do is open up the back and give her more length at the back of her bodice. So yes, you do need to back that opening with some tracing vellum. So I've just got a little strip here. Don't throw your leftover pieces of tracing vellum out, because you will definitely be able to reuse them for all kinds of little jobs, and this is just one of them. So I usually tape down the bottom edge first of all, and then I'll take my ruler and I'm going to measure up 3/4 of an inch right there. And then I will take the upper section of the back and I'll put it into that specific dot right there. And you might need more than 3/4, you might need less than 3/4. It really is a testing issue. And sometimes you can tell by how deep and long the diagonal lines are in the back of your body, but sometimes it's just guessing as well. Okay, so now I've added the required length that is needed in the back of the bodice. I've raised the back neck up, but now let's take a look at what actually happened to this upper section of the back bodice. I'll put the line drafter out on this side, and you can see that the back neck now and the whole upper bodice has become somewhat skewed. And we need to deal with that, because anytime you cut your pattern open in a situation, not just like this, but in other circumstances similar to this, there's always consequences. And the consequence is this through the upper section off to the side. And so how do we deal with that? Well, you basically have 3 options. Number 1 is this lends itself to a curved center back seam. So that means that you take the designing stylus and you simply curve in this area right here. And when you've got a curve area like that, it means that you need to add a 5/8 inch seam allowance going down the center back, which also means that you always have to have a seam going down your back. And there are some consequences of that. Number 1 is you have to have the seam. Number 2, it can become visible and you don't like it, but that definitely is an option. And depending on how curved your back is, you may need that. I had a lady come to one of my retreats one time who was very hunched over because she walked on a walker all the time. So you can just imagine how rounded her back was. We had to cut her back open twice and add 4 total inches of extra length for her back. And yes, absolutely, that required having a curved center back seam at all times. But let's say that you've just added a small amount, anywhere up to likely about an inch. So what we can do is we're going to connect from the old waist point to the old neck point. And I will do this in red, and it would look like this. And that means if I've got a nice straight line like this, it means I can still keep that on the fold of the fabric. But look at the consequence. The consequence is that I lost this much width across the back, which means that your reach room has been modified. You've got less reach room now across your back. And so what you could do to compensate a little bit for that loss of reach room is you could take your designing stylus and you could flatten out the curve in your back armhole area, and now I just gave you a little bit more reach room right here. Not quite as much as what I lost, but still maybe enough to give you comfort. So that was option number 2 for dealing with the back. Option number 3, I'll do it in a different color so you can see this, is to take the original waist point and we're going to come straight up from that original waist point like this into the neckline. Now, so that's option number 3, but what's its consequence? Well, the consequence is that I added this much space to the back neckline. And that makes the back neckline bigger now, and likely too big for your neck. So what do you do to get rid of it? Well, you're going to measure this space, which is approximately 1/2 inch, and you're going to go over to the neckline and you're going to make a dart that is 1/2 inch wide and usually only 2.5 to 3 inches long, and usually it's at a bit of an angle, and you're going to draw in a neck dart which will now get rid of this space equals this space. So you get rid of the excess that you need. Of course, this would be taken up into the seam allowance line like this. And now you get rid of the excess that you added at the back neck. And then you say, but Glenda, now I have a dart in my neckline. What can I do about that? Well, you have choices. I've given you 3 options for center back, but this dart now you can do at least 1 or 2 different things with it. If you had a back shoulder dart, you could take that dart and transfer it into the back shoulder dart, making the back shoulder dart wider. That's very definitely an option. And you might say, well, do I need a back shoulder dart if I've done this lengthening? Some bodies do. My lady who was bent over definitely needed a shoulder dart as well as 4 additional inches of length in her back bodice. So you can take that dart and put it into the shoulder dart. And then what you can do with these darts is transfer them into a yoke line. And so as you cut across the bodice, creating a yoke, these darts would close up, giving shape to your yoke, and now you've got the darts incorporated into the yoke. And again, it looks like the yoke is supposed to be there, no darts are seen, and you've given yourself more length at the back, and you've compensated for the extra width that you had at the back neck. So that's definitely a very viable alternative. And in the SureFit Designs Learning Center, in our article library, I didn't mean the article library, in our video library, if you go to D for dresses, you're going to see a video in there that says transferring the back shoulder dart into a yoke line. And so you'll get all of the directions for doing that as well. So you can see how easy that is to add length to create a nice smooth back, and you have 3 different options of ways to deal with that center back. Number 1 is make a curved center back seam. Number 2 is to do a straight line from the original waist point to the original neck point, removing some of your reaching room. And number 3 is waist point straight up on the original center back, adding width to the neckline, and then get rid of it at the neck point. And you know, there's one other thing that I see here that needs to happen. If you choose this option, which was option number 2, coming straight up and losing some of your reach room, that throws off the straight of grain. And so you would need to redraw a straight of grain marking. And usually I do my straight of grain markings approximately 2 inches away from the center back. So I'll draw this in red, and I will show you what the new straight of grain would look like. So you can see it's the same at the bottom, but it angles away from the original blue straight of grain, and that's because of the width we lost at the back in your reaching room. So with that, I would like to encourage you to watch more of our free videos that are found in the SureFit Designs Learning Center. There's over 300 of them. I also encourage you to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. In doing so, you're going to be made aware when we put up new videos, and also for our live videos, which have been very well attended, you'll get pre-notification because I will schedule them ahead of time. And so make sure to like and subscribe. And then also, if you happen to be a Facebook fan, we do have a SureFit Designs private group, and I would invite you to join. You need to request to join, and there are 3 questions that need answering. Make sure you answer them, otherwise you won't be approved. So again, thanks so much for watching, everybody, and I'll see you in the next video.